A single living cell in the human leg stretches continuously from the base of the spine all the way down to the tip of the big toe. It is a microscopic filament roughly 3 feet long, forcing molecular motor proteins to physically march down its interior just to feed its farthest edge. Today we are going to see how the nervous system sustains such an impossible structure. Most cells in the human form are compact little spheres. A chemical entering one side only has to float 1/1000th of a millimeter to reach the other. Inside a normal cell, things just drift. They bump into what they need. But a 3-foot nerve axon shatters the math of random drift. If a nerve ending in the toe needs a replacement part, and that part has to float down from the manufacturing center in the spine, it would take roughly 50 years to arrive. The toe would be dead decades before the repair kit showed up. Biology cannot wait on physics. The spine must actively pump materials downward. It builds a highway. Running down the dark, tubular core of the nerve cell is a dense bundle of parallel tracks called microtubules. They look like hollow scaffolding pipes. And moving along these pipes, stepping 1 foot in front of the other, are the delivery workers. Well, walking is a human word for it. Ratcheting might be better. Ratcheting forward on 2 tangled legs. Kinesin proteins. They are impossibly small mechanical giants. 2 twisted strands of amino acids, terminating in 2 distinct, bulbous feet. When a batch of neurotransmitters or a replacement mitochondrion is manufactured up in the spine, a kinesin molecule binds to it. It hoists a cargo bubble that might be 100 times its own size. A human equivalent would be a single person dragging a fully loaded semi-truck by a rope. Dragging it without a single pause for breath. Then, it begins to march. It takes 1 step. Then another. The stride length is exactly 8 nanometers. A distance so tiny it barely registers in the physical universe. Yet it has to cover 3 entire feet, stepping 8 nanometers at a time. The duration of this continuous, non-stop march stretches so far past normal cellular minutes that it crosses into an entirely different regime of time. A marathon spanning sunrises and sunsets, a relentless mechanical slog in the absolute dark. To understand how we survive this fragile internal tightrope, hit subscribe and like this video, because there is an entire hidden universe of these desperate biological gambles happening right beneath our skin, waiting to be uncovered. The march resumes. Kinesin abandons any floating or gliding. It physically stalks forward. Every single step requires a molecule of cellular energy called ATP to snap into its leading foot. The foot binds to the track, the energy is burned, and a violent mechanical spasm throws the rear foot forward. Snap. Swing. Bind. It does this about 100 times every second. At that speed, the protein's little legs are a blur of thermal chaos. Down at the nanoscale, water molecules are constantly, violently slamming into the protein from all sides. A microscopic hurricane trying to rip the cargo away. Yet the cargo moves smoothly down the leg, passing through the thigh, crossing the vast, dangerous expanse of the knee. But the road is rarely clear. Microtubules are far from empty freeways. They are choked with obstacles. Other proteins, structural blockages, defective materials, chemical debris. When a kinesin hauling a massive fuel payload hits a dead end, it cannot steer around it. It cannot reverse. It cannot hop to another track on its own. The protein only knows how to move in a straight line. The motor stalls. The cargo jiggles helplessly. Sometimes, the protein simply detaches and floats away into the cellular fluid, dropping its precious cargo in the middle of the calf muscle. The nerve ending in the toe remains starved. Except, the cargo does not just sit there. Another kinesin, marching blindly from behind, will bump into the abandoned payload. It attaches its own tether, finds a clear adjacent track, and resumes the haul. A biological relay race. If the command center is isolated all the way up in the spine, and a sudden impact crushes the tissue in the toe, how can the cell possibly know to send repair materials before the distant edge simply rots away? The signal cannot come through the blood. That is too slow, too indirect. The alert must travel back up the exact same wire. While kinesin marches downward, an entirely different motor protein called dynein marches upward. Dynein hauls chemical distress signals, empty cargo shells, and cellular trash back to the spine for recycling. It is a heavier, clunkier machine. It walks backward on the exact same tracks, dodging the downward traffic in a completely uncoordinated dance that somehow avoids fatal head-on collisions. And we finally arrive at the sheer, terrifying math of the journey. At a flat-out sprint of 100 steps per second, moving roughly 1 micrometer every second, it takes 11 days for a motor protein to walk from the spine to the toe. 11 days. Nearly 2 weeks of continuous, unbroken marching. For millions of individual steps, the kinesin molecule burns through an astronomical amount of energy just to deliver a single packet of proteins to the cell's frontier. If the trip takes that long, a sudden emergency should be fatal. 11 days is far too long to wait for a patch to a torn membrane. The nerve cell solves this by not waiting. It never waits for an emergency. The spine is constantly, blindly shipping parts. A continuous conveyor belt of kinesin motors is always walking down the leg. Millions of them. Right now, sitting in a chair, standing in a room, walking down a street. Inside the longest cell in the body, an army of two-legged molecules is a week into a march that began last Tuesday. They are carrying spare parts for damage that has not happened yet. They stockpile the toe with vesicles, mitochondria, and patching materials, creating a localized reserve. But this continuous shipping creates a bizarre structural crisis. If millions of motors are always walking down the track, wouldn't the track itself wear out? The microtubule highway is built of fragile proteins. Subjected to the relentless pounding of kinesin feet and the friction of massive cargo bubbles, the structural scaffolding begins to fracture. The road splinters. A broken track would derail the entire supply chain. A derailed chain means the nerve ending suffocates. If the nerve ending suffocates, numbness creeps up the foot, followed by tissue death. Biology handles the crumbling road in the strangest possible way. It does not send out repair crews. It lets the road dissolve. Microtubules are inherently unstable. The moment they are built, they are already trying to tear themselves apart. They exist in a state of dynamic chaos. The front end of the track is constantly growing, assembling new pipe sections from free-floating bricks in the fluid. At the exact same time, the back end of the track is fraying, falling to pieces, melting away into the void. It is as if a bridge is being built out into the sky while the pavement immediately behind the construction crew turns to dust. The highway is moving. The motor proteins are walking on a treadmill that is dissolving right behind their heels. If a kinesin stalls for too long, the road beneath it simply ceases to exist. It is a precarious, frantic race against the physics of decay. Every sensation of a stubbed toe, every shift of weight, every adjustment of balance relies entirely on this unseen march. The simple act of wiggling a toe is a miracle of logistics. If the march stops, the long wire goes silent. Certain neurodegenerative diseases are nothing more than a traffic jam on this very road. A minor protein mutation causes the cargo bubbles to stick together. The kinesin motors pile up in the axon. The highway clogs. The toe goes numb, then the foot, then the leg. The slow creep of silence is just a failed supply chain inside a microscopic tube. Yet, against all thermodynamic odds, the line usually holds. The proteins step, the tracks build, the cargo arrives. We are held together by billions of blind, stumbling steps in the dark. A vast, impossible journey playing out in the space of a single cell, proving that survival is not a static state, but a restless, endless march just to stay in place. If this changed how you see your own body, subscribe, there is far more hidden inside you that we have not explored yet. A like and a comment genuinely help this channel reach more curious minds, and that support is what makes it possible to keep producing these documentaries. Tell us in the comments what we should explore next.